Concert Queen Connect. We are on location for the first time. Yes, we've been practicing. These are our moves. So
1, 2, 3.
We're gonna do this every 10 minutes, but no, we're just kidding. Thank you so much for being here, Kelly. Yeah. This is Kelly Gray. If for those of y'all that are not familiar, she is one of the founders of RealMusic Events, RealMusic RealFashion, the GoGo Gadgettes, Beat Brunch,
Seismic Dance Event,
and Seismic Dance Event, which is like the premier club and techno house music festival here in Austin. Well, I need a breath after saying that. Like, that was a lot. So again, this is one of the interviews I have been looking forward to the most because I feel like there's so much to you that people don't see. For sure. And there's a lot of layers, like we're saying, with all of these different things. But let's take it to the very beginning, just to kind of start off with how you got into what you're doing now with RealMusic. Yeah, so it's definitely been a journey.
I grew up in San Antonio. Like, I wasn't born.
Did you? I'm from San Antonio.
Oh, nice. Well, I feel like maybe, have we done this?
Maybe.
What high school did you go to? Like Mac or something?
I went to Taft and Clark.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was going to say Clark next. I went to Reagan.
Did you?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. We might have had, in passing. Okay.
Yeah.
San Antonio.
So I grew up in San Antonio. My dad was in the military. I'm the youngest of 3 girls. So he retired when I was younger. So we got to stay put there. Masks being safe, guys. Mm-hmm. And then I went to college at UT. So in 2005, I came to Austin and then definitely finally found my roots and being surrounded by like minds. That's something I was looking for my whole life and just got to nestle into it. And then that's how I found the electronic dance music scene. It was my freshman year, Halloween night. First semester, went to an event in the Enchanted Forest. And
Really?
It was all...
What's the Enchanted Forest?
I felt like they closed and they started doing things again, but it pretty much doesn't exist much anymore. I'm not positive, but it was this place. It was literally woods, but events would be hosted there.
Huh.
And so there were DJs and all of that, and people were in Halloween costumes. So it was my first experience going to an event. But looking back in life, I always listened to music that had kind of electronic elements to it. Mm-hmm. I just didn't know there was a whole scene about it because that wasn't really poppin', at least the high school I went to in San Antonio at the time. So anyway, I was in culture shock in a good way. And I loved the music and just everything. And I just wanted to just dive into it. So I went home and Andrew and I always joke about this because when I talk about it, it's I would download anything on LimeWire and BearShare and all of that, that had electronic anything. And just try to find stuff and digest it and soak it up to learn more and figure it all out. And that was the MySpace days. So start networking through all of that. And so I would go to every single show in Austin at the time. Everyone just seemed pretty much going to the same things because there wasn't an abundance. And it's always been a small little scene or a big little scene. Kind of how
Especially,
Austin is. Or a big little city.
Yeah.
So I just started going to shows and it just progressed from there. And then started getting to dressing up and doing my cool makeup and stuff like that. And then I joined this team that was more kind of artsy. They would go to events and dance around, but everyone was wearing their own thing. And it wasn't a full blown dance team kind of thing. And then I started, sorry, I know it's been a lot, but I went to some of the clubs downtown, but they were more mainstream. And I would start go-go dancing for those. And in my mind, I'm well, I want to be at these shows that are electronic dance music, shows, concert kind of style. And I'd like to dance for those. And no one was really dancing for the club shows.
Yeah. So take that back to where you started dancing. Because I feel like that's something that I am so fascinated with.
Yeah.
And the first time I saw a go-go dancer, I was in San Diego and I'd never seen, San Antonio didn't really have go-go dancers. And then I went to, I moved to San Diego and I remember walking to a club with this crazy LED wall. And for the first time, I just saw these ethereal, beautiful ballerina, sexy. And I was oh my God, I want to, and I just stood there and just stared at them because it was just, to me, it was so beautiful.
Right.
It's a dance and it was so coordinated and just beautiful. And so I'm wondering what was that? Did you have a moment like that where you're you fell in love with dance, you fell in love with the music and the culture, but what about dancing that?
Yeah, I think, so growing up, I played sports, I wasn't on dance teams or anything like that, But when my love for the music, I started like finding my own like unique ways to dance and just freestyle to it. And I really connected with like, street styles of dancing and like ravey kind of underground warehouse dancing and just electronic inspired dancing. And I just started honing in on that. And then I enjoyed the getting ready and really going over the top aspect too. So it was kind of like a pairing of both worlds, just really like finding your artistic outlet in that sense. So I really enjoyed that. And then I was just dancing and dancing and dancing. I found like this love and passion for that and just continuing to grow in that realm. So that's how, like at the time there was only like a club or two here that did that, but they were like mainstream, top 40 pop music. And it was fun because you're getting to dance and still get dressed up. But then I'm always thinking of how can I better my path? What makes the most sense? What's more true to me? And that was about pairing the dance side with the professional aspect with like electronic dance music. So I got the idea to just start my own group. I'd already met like a few key clutch girls. I thought we had the right vibe and kind of thing going together. And so started working on that in like 2007. And our first gig was January 2008. So I consider that like when the Gadgettes start. So it's the GoGo Gadgettes. And people think it's gadgets, but it's Gadgettes because it's like a play on words, like feminine words like, bachelorette, brunette, marionette, like the ETTE.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, it's Gadget.
Yeah, I was, okay.
Sometimes I'm like, I should just kept it easy. It's just got
You learn something new every day. I've always thought gadgets, but no.
Yeah.
It's Gadgettes.
Right.
Got
it. So that's when I started that. And then that started to go towards the path of making outfits. So in the pursuit of being unique and creative expression, like how can we look even more like unique to ourselves, and that was if you start making your own costumes. So it went from like styling to, okay, let me learn how to use the sewing machine. One of my dancers at the time knew how to use one, so she showed me, and I just started from there. So start with really simple things, and then you just keep building and building, and all of a sudden you're designing
crazy outfits. But so we'll have to show some like either at the end of this, but I mean, I was looking through just kind of like the archives of these outfits in your closet. Do you keep so they're very unique. So like to each show, like you tailor. Yeah. I mean, it's like a full on, I don't even know how to describe it. How can you describe it to people that have never seen these types of, because your outfits have been in Ultra on the Ultra, what's their name?
Angels.
The Ultra Angels.
Right.
So that's like the level. So to go from someone who just learned how to sew to now she's sewing for the Ultra Angels, which is Ultra Music Festival's GoGo dancers, is a huge accomplishment. So kudos to you for that. But how does that translate into, like, how do you, just the creative side behind that? Because they're these outfits are insane, y'all. So if you haven't seen them, you need to go follow the GoGo Gadgettes. But I'm like, where does she think of these things? Because they're so unique.
Yeah, I mean, it just kind of grows. And then like for our own shows, at least, I'll be starting with like, who's the artist? And I also make like the schedule of who's dancing. Like it should all jive with the style of music, their strengths, their passions for dancing. Cause you want them to be passionate about it because they bring out a different level of energy when they're performing. And then who looks good together? Like what balances well? Then you're like thinking about the style of the music and the vibe. And so you'll end up having a feeling about what color, what kind of concept and cuts you're trying to do. And then there's still like kind of trends in the costume design realm that you're like keen on. And so you're thinking about those and pushing your own boundaries as well. Mm-hmm. So it's just always like just a growth thing. You're always just building on top of what you've done. Yeah. And then you start wanting to incorporate more cool and interesting materials, things that are like more edgy and like high fashion or techie and stuff, like reflective stuff, this and that, and things that are eye-catching and just wow factor that maybe you don't see on a normal basis down the street. So it just goes from there, and it's fun.
Yeah, because I think there's a different dynamic too when you're dancing in it. It's one thing to like design just like a t-shirt, but like you're designing these complex outfits and they're moving, and the way that they move in it is just, but with you being a dancer, you would know that. Yeah. You would know how to.
Yeah, you want like certain things, like you don't want something to be too flowy if it's really like edgy kind of thing. You want something more like, I don't know, like form-fitting or whatever. It just depends. Mm-hmm. And then for like pretty ethereal music, you might have more flowy stuff. And you also think about who you're designing for. And that's one thing I always took pride in was changing like my design concepts based off of who's going to perform, because I want people to feel their best. So you work around their body type and their comfort levels. So I think that's really important. And especially as you grow and you get older, your comfort levels change, your problem areas change. So being able to like stay in it by working around what you're costuming is it's a challenge, but it's also makes it fun too. Yeah.
So then going from the GoGo Gadgettes and you're working with them, then how does RealMusic, and Andrew Parsons is her husband. You go by Kelly Gray, though.
Yes.
So tell me about that, if that's okay, if you want to share that, because I'm curious. I've always wondered that. I'm like, Kelly Gray, I was like, are they married? Are they not married? But then I know you're married. But then what's the story behind that?
Yeah, so I kept my last names. I'm Kelly Gray, and Andrew's Andrew Parsons. And if and when we have kids, we might do like a hyphenated situation, and maybe I'll go change it at that point to the hyphenated. But I don't know, like independence and my own identity has always been something really, the mic, sorry. It's always been something really important to me. And I felt like I've been a businesswoman since, I was in college. So I started the Gadgettes when I was in college, and now we have multiple companies, but I already started building a name for myself, and I knew I'd probably end up getting gray hair at some point. I could just work having my brand
dyed or like
Kelly the Gray.
That's so funny.
But yes, I don't know. I just didn't seem like myself to change my last name. I just didn't see that identity, and I'm proud of like my family and my lineage and all of that, and just wanted to keep it. So
that's awesome. Yeah, I always wondered that. So then some
people will still like call me Kelly. Like if we get letters, sometimes they'll say Kelly Parsons. Toddy B does this all the time. I've called him out on it so many times, and he will not stop.
He's probably doing it because he knows.
Parsons.
Yeah. Shout out Toddy B. We love you. So how did you guys? Were you already with or doing the GoGo Gadgettes, and then that's how you met Andrew?
Yeah. So at the time, Andrew and I we would like work in the scene together. So there was a company that would do shows at like Sky Lounge at the time, and like he would DJ for them and promote, and then like I would help promote and we would perform. So we were friends, and we had like friends of friends for a while too. Even like my summer after my freshman year, I worked with his brother at Manuel's North. So like we had all of these reasons why we would come together. So then after that, we became friends because we were just working hard in the scene and doing our thing. And then it eventually progressed after probably a couple years. And then we got together. And not long after, like within a year or so, we were just motivated to start doing our own shows. And
that's awesome.
It's always just kind of like the do-it-yourself mentality. And if you have a vision and you know the experience so well, and you know like the sound that you want to bring. And at the time, there wasn't too much variety in terms of the types of artists coming here. There's a lot more like the mainstream dance music coming over and over again, like Benny Benassi, Cascade here and there. And it was good, but like we wanted more. And this is like what we were dedicating our lives to. So Andrew has a passion for like up and coming artists, and that's a DJ. And he had a record label, RealMusic Recordings. He was always in touch with like people on the rise, and he had passion in seeking that out and finding it and then wanting to bring some of these artists. Mm-hmm. So it kind of started there. We consider 2009 like the beginning of RealMusic Events officially, but the beginning was prior to that. Andrew would throw some like one-off shows at like a venue or a warehouse, and I would even do like my own like birthday party things. And I booked Andrew once.
Did you really?
Yeah, or actually every single time, even as friends, he played each year. So it's just funny, like we already had that kind of in us, and then we're like, well, let's start doing these events, and it just grew from there. And so we didn't stop doing shows, and here we are. Our biggest break has been because of COVID, since 2009.
Wow.
Which it's been like a blessing in disguise, I will say. Just not that COVID is great, but I mean like the break, just like the mental break and just the energetic break, because things have just gotten so intense and fast paced and show, like you're doing this festival, all of it, and you get burnt out, but you're not going to stop because it's what you're passionate about. It's what your career path is. And this allowed us to like sit down, take a breather, and start reshifting and figuring it all out in a new way.
And I think that's a testament, and thank you for doing that, for doing that for Austin, for this community, because without you, we wouldn't have, all the different shows and all the different vibes. And you're someone I feel like right away. So I moved to Austin back in 2017, And I was not familiar with this scene here at all. And I was telling Steve about this actually. So I was dating someone at the time, and I had been to Kingdom one time. And Kingdom is a nightclub, which we'll go into. That's the
other one of the company.
Yeah, another company, but Kingdom was a staple here. R.I.P. Kingdom. But it is a place that there's so many stories behind there, but I knew nobody. I don't even know if I've told you this. I might have typed it out and said something, but Kingdom and you guys are near and dear to my heart for the simple fact that like I knew 0 people here. And I was going through, I had been there one time for the Dirty South show back in 2017. It was amazing.
There's always good times when he played.
Yeah. And so went to that show with the guy I was seeing at the time. We broke up and I had 0 friends. And so I actually went to a tanning bed, and I was in there and I was like blasting my music. And then Jen Warren worked there, and she was like, hey, like, what were you listening to? And I told her, I was like, oh, just this. And she's like, do you like that music? And she's like, do you ever go to shows? I was like, I've been to one show here. Like literally had never gone to shows. And she's like, oh my God, well, let me get your number. Like if we ever go to something, I was like, cool. Like I have a friend now, my first friend.
Yeah.
And then when we had broken up, there was the Dubfire show. And I had texted her because I was like, oh, I have 2 tickets. And I was like, hey, do you want these 2 tickets to Dubfire? Like boyfriend and I just broke up. We're not seeing each other. And she's like, well, what, are you coming? And I was like, well, no, I don't have anybody. She's like, come with me.
Yeah.
She's like, you should still come. All my friends are going to be there. And that was the night I met all my friends.
Right.
That I continued, Brandon Castro, Andy Garcia, Kelsey, all that whole group, and met you guys.
Yep.
And fell in love with Kingdom. And I was like, wow, this is bigger than just a nightclub. It's a community.
Exactly. And that's something that means, like I got little chills, not to be cheesy, but that's such a huge aspect of what we do. And that's why we also know it's like really, there's something special going on here in Austin. And I worked for Google and had an opportunity to leave. And I did this little stint where we were going back and forth, but we never left Austin. We got a place here and we're just doing the back and forth thing. Cause we knew like, we're not leaving this scene behind just to go somewhere else. Cause there's something special about the Austin scene and the community. And so many times we've heard and experienced people who have found like their life, like we've done it. We've found our lifelong friends through our shows and the extended community, and people continue to do that. Like our promoters come in, or people are like, I didn't know anyone. We're like, just come to a show. Like we have that common bond, and it's not like everyone just sticks to themselves. It's a thing where you end up like getting to know everybody.
Yeah. And
so it's really special. Like everyone's friendships and relationships and all of these things are growing within this little special scene.
Totally. Well, especially because it's your passion, it's my passion. Yeah. And like I wouldn't have ATX Concert Queen had I not met all those people and been going out to shows, and it's just been a catalyst for music and love and the community. And like I said, that wouldn't have been possible if you guys hadn't done that. So what was, I guess, the path? So you went from RealMusic to Kingdom and going that route.
Yeah. So as RealMusic, Andrew and I would throw shows, and Andrew's like the talent buyer, so he books like the artists and all of that. And usually I'm like the anal OCD one about like what's going on with the production and everything like that, and more of like the creative side of things and just the tactical like facilitation of like the event itself, especially in the past few years. So we would do shows at like different venues. We were doing a lot of shows that started off at like Light Bar, Republic Live. So Republic Live had a bunch of shows there. And then we would do some smaller shows at Kingdom. They had opened in like 2011 or 2012. And we weren't affiliated, and it was more like a local thing. And every once in a while they would have headliners and stuff, more underground. Then they asked us to start doing shows there, and we did, and they were just going so well. And we liked to do a variety. So we still did the like house, techno, like underground stuff, but like progressive. And at the time, even some like big room stuff, because it was popular at the time. And we just like to have that diversity. You know, sometimes it gets boring if you're doing too much of the same thing.
Right.
Plus you're like working with like different like inter scenes and stuff like that. And people's tastes change and evolve. And sometimes you're thoroughly like interested in different sounds. So we like to keep it interesting. So we did that variety, and it really worked well. And we like went on as partners of the venue of Kingdom in like 2015, I want to say. And so most of our shows were there. Every once in a while we would do something at a different venue for like a larger capacity, but like that's where most of the shows were. And it was an intimate club, but like high quality production, like
yeah.
in terms of sound and lighting. And it got a name for itself, like nationally and even internationally in some senses. So when that rug was pulled out from under us because of, you know, the Austin real estate acquisition woes, it was detrimental. I was like mourning it, like as if I'd gone through a breakup, like playing all these like sad songs and stuff like that I used to listen to like when I was like a brooding teenager. And I'm like, wow, like, I feel like I'm going through like a breakup. It was really depressing. But you know, sometimes like shitty things need to happen to be a catalyst for just new chapters. And so we've been looking for the next venue for us to call our home since then. And, you know, we've been throwing shows at other places like Cedar Street Courtyard and the Parish and stuff like that. But ultimately we'll find our new home. And I guess that just might be some news that Austin may be getting in the near future or something like that. But
love that.
It's definitely been something that we've been working on behind the scenes for ever since Kingdom. And it's hard because, you know, the real estate game is so crazy right now in Austin. As you know, downtown, everything's pretty small. And then like sound ordinance are issues, condos going up are issues. We're losing a lot of our like old brick and mortar spots and they're turning into high rises or whatever. So it's not as easy as one would think to find a new venue that makes sense, especially for us to grow into with like the size of shows we're doing. So
well, and the size and the time, like you guys. So Kingdom, for those of y'all that aren't familiar either, they would be open for like super late. Like what was it, like 4?
So there would be like the regular hours, which most of the nights were like our shows, and then there's after hours. So the cool thing is because we're doing after hours is it would give
at the same place, which is very unique because right now people will just do like an after hours at whatever, but it's very rare to have that caliber of an artist that sometimes is playing until 5
So sometimes it would just be like a local thing and we would actually keep it that way so that there would be the opportunity sometimes for the headliner during the show hours to, hey, I'm feeling great. I love the crowd here. Something special. It's dope. I want to play longer. And we would have so many impromptu like sets that become like 6-hour sets from like the world's biggest like DJs. You know, Dumpfire has done that many times and just a bunch of artists like that. And then there would be sets Andrew started doing these like open to close things where he'd book them for like the entire duration or to go well into the after hours. And that there was a cool like flexibility and everything. A lot of the after hours were still like just you know, like locals, and there's definitely a different like kind of crowd that can come in if it's just like opening like sometimes like the night would clear out, like everyone has to leave at 2 if it's not continuing over, and then they like re-enter. And so sometimes you get different types of people that are coming because they're just coming from whatever bar and they want to prolong the night, and the vibe can be different and after hours than like the normal hour shows. And that's something that we would hear from people and we'd be like, no, it's really different if you come for like a show than if you only go for a night that's solely after hours that's not a show. It's just so different. So that's like, that was a learning that it was a cool thing, but it could also be, I don't know, it's an interesting thing business-wise and vibe-wise when you're dealing with like those aspects.
So what would you say was one of your most memorable moments at Kingdom?
Oh my God, there's just so many. We had so many shows there. Like within a year, it would be like around 100 shows a year. And I would dance for a lot of them or have my dancers dance. And that was something that was so special because being an intimate club, you know, it's like 300 cap. And then you've got this intense like sound system and lighting. And then you're getting these amazing artists and it's intimate. Like, so many of these artists, if you saw them at a festival, you don't get the same experience because that energy just kind of dissipates. Like it's too broad open air. There's a million people. You're not close enough to the sound or whatever. Like here, you're just enveloped in all of it. And you get stronger sets out of it sometimes because the energy is just richer and thicker. And then when you're performing, you can just sometimes tap into something that you can't always make yourself tap into. Like you're just feeling it to your fingertips. And so that was something that was always powerful and strong, that on a regular basis, I would have those nights where I'm like really channeled into my own artistry because of the entire environment empowering you. And then sometimes you perform elsewhere and it's just different, you know, like you don't get that same impact. So being able to find that perfect recipe again is something that's been really important to us.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think what's most memorable for me is those nights where I got to just, you go on your little platform or whatever and just get into it and just channel something.
Something special.
Yeah.
So with all the shows now, and I think this is really important to talk about with the pandemic obviously happening. And you said you guys, took a break, but you're doing shows again.
Right.
You also had Seismic Dance Event booked. So with all that happening, what would you say, how has that affected you, and how have you guys been pivoting? And I know it's a super loaded question.
No, it's good and it's relevant. So Seismic was we were going to do 2 this year. There was going to be a spring edition and a fall edition. So we've had to move Seismic 2 times. So I joke that 3.0 has become 3.3. We're on V3 of Seismic 3.0, which is supposed to be now next May in 2021. So dealing with like the show moves was like, the most anxiety, gut-wrenching situation, because it's just so complicated and complex and muddy and not fun, because no businesses ever plan for something like this to happen. So it's not part of like your business model to just reverse everything. So we dealt with moving Seismic multiple times, and then moving like our shows, and it was difficult because people want refunds, and you're like, we have so many shows. If we refunded all of those, you go like bankrupt, like checking into bankruptcy camp, Right. And then there's no more shows later.
Yeah. So tell people about that, because I think that's such that idea. We talk about artists, and we've done that on this show of how to support artists. But like you said, if you refunded all these tickets, people just assume that there's just this piggy bank just sitting there, and you're like, oh, here you go.
Just swimming in all the ticket money.
Right. But there's contracts.
Right.
That are in place.
So the thing, especially early on, is like a lot of shows, it depends. Every arrangement is different, but a lot of times like you're paying half the deposit for the entire artist's fee up front, or a portion of it. So you're out a bunch of money for a show before it happens, obviously. The expenses like accrue, you're paying for the artists. And then like all of the different, team members involved in different things and companies that you use, and like your media team, and like those are just moving expenses and stuff like that. And so like money's coming in and money's going back out. You've just got all like your social media team, your designers doing all of your flyers and all of those things. But those deposits were big. So in the beginning, like you're like, well, all of this is out. So let's all of the shows have a no refund policy, for instance. So no one anticipates a global pandemic where literally everything will get moved. Like that's just never been foreseen. So like what we did is the best that we could, just because there's so many shows, we're like, well, we can't refund all of these. Like we just can't do that, So, you offer to like everything will get moved to their new rescheduled date, and that's just gonna have to be the best that we can do. And if you can't make that new date, like you can put that ticket value towards like another show or something like that. So it was definitely tricky. You have to think of like, if 50% or 75% or 100% of people want the refunds, like, well, we can't do that. So this is what it needs to be. Now things are different because we've started doing shows and you're able to kind of anticipate things. So like, it's just a little bit different. In the beginning, it's hard because you're just blindsided. With Seismic, we like the first round, we're like, we'll handle like the refunds. So we did refunds for a certain period of time, and it's painful and it hurts because, especially for a festival, you've got tons of things that you're paying for, even from the past festival. Oh, wow. So it's just like this moving thing, like you have relationships and different entities that you're working with who do your public health and safety and code and all of that. And like your deco and all of these things. And we work together on all these projects, and it's just this moving kind of thing, a moving target, it's like a moving train. And so to suddenly be like, well, shit, we can't go completely backwards, but we were able to handle like the first round of refunds. So we did that for Seismic. And then when we had to move it again, we're like, okay, we can't do another round. So everything will just be transferred. And for the most part, like our community has been really understanding, and it's painful because you want to be able to appease everyone and just here, do whatever you can. But then you have to come back to like, can we sustain this? Can we actually survive? And you have to do what's even feasible. So, it's been interesting, and it's different in every scenario. Like RealMusic Events shows versus Seismic, it's different, but ultimately because the community that we have is pretty tight knit and well connected, like it's been really nice to be able to benefit from that. But you see like other brands other festivals, just the outrage, and even like entities that are more corporate that you don't even necessarily love as an independent promoter, you feel for them because you're like, dude, if you're one of these massive companies that have a million shows going on in a million different markets, like just think as a consumer, if you truly love and support going to these shows, many of people's best experiences in life are like these shows. Like that was the best night of my entire life. Well, the person and the company that makes those nights for you, like have a little bit of love and sympathy for them. And so it's kind of like there's some allowances that you need to be able to give so that companies can survive. Like you look at the restaurants and stuff and the bars here, they were able to open before companies that throw shows could. And a lot of those were still closing because they're not making enough revenue or just being closed for that amount of time. They can't survive. But can you imagine if they had to do refunds for all of their past purchases? No, because they can barely even survive. Like now rent, and we have rent too. This is our office space turned store, and we were supposed to open like over a year ago. And then when we were going to open sorry, there's a lot of stuff in detail here.
I asked, it was a pretty loaded question. But
we were eventually going to be like, okay, let's open the store in March. It was going to be like March 14th or 15th. And then COVID hit like the 13th or 14th. So our last show was Carl Cox. The next day, the first confirmed cases in Austin. And the next day was supposed to be the store opening. So we postponed that like 6 months or so.
Oh my goodness.
And you've got all these bills and all that. So it's hard. And some are able to sustain it better than others, and it's really sad because you don't want like the culture of like your city to go away because people can't survive this long, unending hiatus from business. So, but what is empowering is to know that like through all of these complexities, we can find different ways to still function. So at first we wanted like an abundance of caution. We're not going to do shows or anything like that. And then as things started to open and like cases were going like down, and we've read so much and stayed really on top of like the information and research and all of that. And when places open and they do the masks and all of that, it works, like if you have parameters and you can find new ways to still do business and for people to experience certain things just in a different way. So we started figuring that out. We started with our brunch events because it's this big, huge outdoor garden. Everyone has their own little table super far away from each other. And then there's a DJ, and that was all we were comfortable with doing to begin with. And it worked, and getting good feedback from it was inspiring. And then you're like, okay, well, we could start doing our shows at like Cedar Street's an open air venue too. Like we wouldn't do it inside right now. It's not something that we're ready for, or that we think the scene is necessarily ready for our types of shows. But like that's an open air courtyard. And if we like significantly reduce the capacity where there's enough space for people to distribute among themselves, go to like their little tables and their own little areas, and keep their masks on, then you can safely enjoy an event.
I've seen you you're on top of it. Kelly is at the events just making sure mask on guys, and I think it's
brutal sometimes. Overall our events go really well, but sometimes like when people like you need to remind them over and over again, you're like, I don't want to have to be this person telling people to do that. So we get an extra security person so that they can help do it, but sometimes you're still like, hey, go get that person, blah, blah, blah. And it's ultimately like we need to be as safe and cautious as possible if we're going to do this at all. Because it's better to be safer than to be not careful enough.
And I feel like you guys have been like that from the get-go. And I appreciate that because I see all the different events that are going on, that are happening. I've been to some of them. So seeing where people's comfort levels too are different. And that's one of the first things that when I was talking to one of my friends who, he's one of the owners at Native, and he was like, how'd your first opening go? And it was just, there's no control over what people are going to do. People are going to do whatever they want to do, regardless of the rules and things like that. But so I really appreciate, places like you and promoters like you that are really taking people's safety into account, because some people aren't.
I feel like the majority aren't. And it's been really disconcerting, especially because we've already done the whole gyration of opening and then going backwards and having to close. And it's like everyone suffers. Businesses close. Why would we not do the things that we can do to like still operate? Like being able to operate and do business is great. If we can just do certain guidelines and standards and uphold people to it, then we get to keep doing these. We don't have to go backwards again, which we're already like, people are wondering if we're going to go backwards again. And I just don't understand. Like, it takes personal responsibility from the patrons as well as accountability and, oversight from the venue or the promoters or the combination doing it. And so in our minds, it's the common denominator is that you have to be able to have security to help enforce this. You need to have a clear policy. You need to be communicating that before, then right at the show, and then continue to maintain that standard. And so having like X amount of security folks dedicated to looking out for masks and this and that is important. And if you just expect the patrons to do it themselves and then they see that it's never going to be moderated or mitigated, then they'll just get sloppy. But once they see it is something that they'll be upheld to, you end up not having to police as much because they're getting keen on that and they're being responsible themselves. And so like at, our first shows at Cedar Street, especially at the first weekend, it was like, wow, it was very nice to see how well people were behaving and respecting the guidelines and adhering to it. And, like the fire marshal came by and was like, more people need to be sitting, but this looks good. Everyone's in their masks. So people listen. They're like, just sit down. Like every once in a while you can get up and dance, but for the most part, like kind of space, be in an area. You can find a different seat later. You're not stuck, but there needs to be some kind of orderliness. And they were shutting down like bars and stuff nearby. And then they came back in and they looked through and thumbs up and left. So if you do it right, you can keep doing it.
We can have nice things, people.
Yeah. So
continue those safeguards. But I said, I just think that's such a testament to the people that I see that are doing the temperature checks. Everyone's different. I've seen even like with the drive-ins that are happening, and that's a very safe space that I feel safe and other people feel safe, but it's just been this, people are all over the place right now. Some people are just tired of being inside and just want music. But if you want, that's one thing I think people need to know too about RealMusic is that you're not just bringing in Joe Schmo. We had that time where it was just whoever we could get locally, and now you guys are bringing in these bigger acts, and people know like the level and the quality of these productions. So I'm sure that's a testament more of why they trust you to come and do these things and to come and do these events. Yeah,
and a lot of like these new shows, because they're headliners, and a lot of them are very big, popular headliners,
like worldwide DJs.
And then we're limiting capacity, like that the venue can hold like over 700 people, but we're limiting it to like 150 or 175 for the shows. And that's because there's this courtyard, there's like an upstairs terrace where you can see the show, and then they've got these multiple like indoor areas for where the bars are. And we know this is a show. The majority of people need to be like facing the artist. So we're not going to base our cap off of the entire venue. We're going to base it off of like the usable show space.
Oh, that's awesome.
And so like, here's all the seating. Like, how much can that hold? So we didn't want to start, like, obviously we'd make more money and it would be great to be able to sell more, but like, it's our responsibility that in order to do a show right now, we can only do it if it's going to be like safe, on the safer end. And so that's some of the restrictions we needed to put in place. And, you can always build up if there's room too, but you don't start off with more than you can chew. Plus, we also needed it to be an amount of people that you can police with the masks. So if there's too many people, it's going to be too hard to moderate like those, like the rules. So all of that went into like our assessment to go at the 20% capacity, whereas you could do like 75 to even 100 outdoor for like restaurant, like music situations. It's changing again, but yeah, we were already significantly under, and we're at like the recommendation there is now going back to stage 4. So that worked out for us. We're still always like nervous and wanting to keep our like eye on everything to make sure it's as best as possible. But yeah, I mean, we've heard only good things from the people that have actually gone, especially like we want to cater to the most cautious. We're not going to cater to the person who doesn't care. Like we want to be able to provide a safe avenue for people to enjoy the arts who also care about like their responsibility and their safety and others' safety. So that's who we cater to. We're not going to be like part of the problem. And I think it's also good that some people set standards. There are things like so many people are doing like underground. There's a lot of underground stuff happening all over the country. Questionable things, places where they're not upholding any rules, and it's a problem, and then that becomes more of the norm. So then you don't want like music scene to be associated with just shit show, right? Mm-hmm. Like you don't want everyone to think there's no way to experience these things in a safe way. So if people are going to be gathering and listening to music, then like if there's professionals who have found ways to be able to host that in a like professional setting mm-hmm. where there will be monitoring and all of that, then that's great. And that's something that we've stepped up to be able to do, because there was a reasonable way to do it and it's worked, and we're going to keep doing that if we can. Yeah.
So there's this side of you that I don't think a lot of people get to see, because and this is another, we were kind of talking about this earlier, and I didn't really realize this until like we were on Friendship together. Yeah. So we went to Friendship, and seeing you just in a completely different environment was awesome. But I think people
like
forget
not
that.
Stressed out.
I think that's what you're saying. People lose that sight, or they forget, like when we're going to shows and we're going to these amazing events, like, you know, people work their 9 to 5 during the week, and then they have a show for the weekend, and, you know, they come in, and you and Andrew are just going, and you're doing things. I see you, you know, Dirty Bird, you're like on your walkie-talkie doing all this stuff, but you're moving. And so if there's moments where people necessarily, like you said, if you're telling someone to put their mask on, I think there could be a misconception about you that like,
she's bitchy, blah, blah, blah.
But it's work for you. And
it's like, it's not fun for me. Afterwards, I'm like, I hate being in this like aura of having to be the authoritarian, you know? And people associate like the party scene with like no rules, no authority. But we're still doing like professional events with professional like artists and all of that. And this is like, we've signed up and dedicated our lives to it, and we've sacrificed a lot as well. And so this is gonna be our career path. We're not gonna just be like, it's not a party for us at every show, you know, like we're not just there to have fun and just, we do have fun and we enjoy it, but it's like, there have to be parameters.
Exactly. But that's where I feel like people, like I said, when I was on Friendship with you and I saw you just letting loose, I was like, oh, like she's a person too. But that's where people, you can have that misconception about you and Andrew, because you guys are providing an experience for all these people. And that's something where I'm curious as to like, how would your friends and the people that know you really well, how would they describe you?
Oh man, passionate. Definitely for both me and Andrew is passionate for sure. Passion driven. Everything we do, there has to be passion associated. We don't do things if we're not passionate about it or if we don't believe in it. But then along with that comes like a seriousness. I guess I have an intensity about me. But I'm also like really like goofy, and like comedy and laughter is huge for us. So like our closest friends know that we're like little children, you know, inside that are doing big things. You know, like we have our serious side, you know, especially if we're working. Like I'm always thinking like, how can this be better? Is that anyone who knows me will know that's my mentality. Like I'm always thinking and trying to train people that work for us to always see stuff in whatever they're doing. Like if you have the mentality, how could this situation be better? Mm-hmm. You will probably do well in whatever you're doing, because there can always be room for improvement, and finding that keeps things going. Like you should always be elevating what you're doing, elevating the experience, the skills and all of that. And that's where my brain is. Like if I'm at a show, like maybe I look too serious, and it's not because I'm in a bad mood. Maybe it depends on what's happening, but it's more so like intense thinking. Like this needs to be addressed. This needs to be fixed. This could be better. Like we need this happening with the lights, you know, whatever. And that's what I'm passionate about. And it is work for us, but in a fun way. You know, it's not just it's not just a playground. It's a professional playground.
So when you're not working and not super, like what else do you like to do to kind of get your mind out of, I know it's hard to turn it off sometimes, but where do you?
So we definitely like re-energize at home, just being chill. We love our downtime when we get it. We watch a lot of like TV shows and movies. Like sometimes we feel like we've seen like every movie there is. We watch a lot of movies and all, but I love that because there's an art form in it, and you get to learn different perspectives, and there's such a value in like the film realm. And so that's something that we're passionate about in food. We're very big foodies.
I always see you guys. I always see Andrew. Andrew's big on Facebook and like posting about food and movies too, about like recommendations and the engagement and what y'all have too on there, because that's where it totally makes sense now.
Yeah, it's just passions there, and just spreading like this would be good. Like y'all would really like this. It's something important to us in terms of food and TV, film, whatever. There's that. Spending time with like our little doggy. So
yeah, tell us about your dog. So we're really passionate about our animals, and Kelly's one of the first people I reached out to. My dog Leon had this little like wart thing that had to get removed, and I remember you talking about, you know, your pup at the time, and just your passion for animals is just so great with all that.
Yeah, so we had Chili was our Jack Russell. She passed away in September last year, and then we recently adopted a rescue named Blossom in the summertime. And so it's been really like nice to have that little fuzzy soul with you again. We feel a little bit more complete. But definitely like our love for animals is something, like just empathy in general, I would say is something that's big with us. That's why we're able to enjoy things like other like artistries and the artistry that we're in, but then also like animals. And I don't know, like I feel like life is more enjoyed when you have that open heart to things, and you know, you stop killing bugs even. Like if you see them at home, you like catch the spider. Like I don't love spiders and they can be creepy, but like you get the cup and you put it, and then and you open the door, and it'll be like a 2-man like effort. We'll like,
oh my gosh,
oh there it is, get it, and then we're like opening the door and then letting it outside, and then you end up realizing how much easier it is to do that. Like, and you start just changing your mentality about a lot of things and start appreciating just life in general for what it is. You know, like we're humans, we're so much more special. Like it's just different. And I'm not vegan. I wish I was. I'm not fully transformed, but yeah, I mean, it's just in general, we're always just questioning like how we can be better and what our choices are and the impact on those around us, the environment, the world. So that's also a big part of our lives too.
Yeah. So how have you guys during this time been just like staying kind of connected to music and the scene and knowing like what's going on and still having your pulse on that?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like our pulse is always there just because we surround ourselves with music lovers and the industry and all of that. I mean, Andrew being like a DJ himself, like as a DJ, he prides himself on being like always trying to be ahead of the curve in terms of finding new music. Like you don't want to be playing old shit, you want to be playing new shit. So then therefore you're aware of like new artists, like we were talking about earlier, and that feeds into like who we should be bringing and all of that. So yeah, just listening to different sets and stuff like that. The interesting thing is, and I think this is the same with some other industry professionals, during COVID, especially when the harder times, you know, when everything's closed, we actually found ourselves not listening to music as much.
Oh, wow.
Because there was too much like associated like emotions that came with it. So Andrew was actually playing a lot more. Like his whole setup was in our kitchen island and it's been like there for months and months, like the whole year almost. So he ended up playing a lot more, which previously he'd stopped playing at home. He would play if he was DJing like a show, which even that was becoming further and fewer in between because we were just too busy working, and he stopped booking himself as much. So he wasn't DJing as much. He wasn't making his mixes as often. So he started just playing more, and that's something that we enjoyed. It's just that. And we stopped listening to like other sets and like the live streams because it was just too like emotional. Like not like, oh, I'm gonna sit here and cry, but you think like, should we be doing live streams right now? Like the pressure, and just got tired of the pressure of like, what should we be doing right now? And so sometimes you just don't want to think about it. So
especially when you're go. And you guys, like you said, 100 shows alone just doing that, but constantly your brain is just on. And
it's tiring.
Yeah. But that's what I think is so cool too, is when you just, and I'm sure that was something, Andrew's not here yet. I made a joke that we could literally have like one with Andrew, one with Kelly, one with Andrew and Kelly, and then 3 other episodes after that. But there's something that's just so fun too, I'm sure, kind of getting back to your roots of music and just sitting there hanging out and you dancing. And I saw that too, where there were sometimes during the quarantine where you started getting back into dancing just for you. And
Right.
there wasn't, like you said, you had to go and perform or he had to make a set or push something out. He could literally just play for himself
Right.
and you could dance just for you, which I think is kind of just beautiful in itself and kind of re-energizing.
Yeah, it was definitely re-energizing. It's like each time you get to do something like that, like when we did even the live stream at the studio, it was so good. Like he DJ'd and it was cool production, and then I got to dance, and it was our first time having like the dancers through Zoom. They were fed into like the stream, and
yeah,
it was so cool.
There was a Put On For Your City, which was put on by Paul Smith.
Hey, Paul.
Hi, Paul. And so with that, it was at this actual studio, but that was still like that was the first kind of, he was doing these live streams, but there was nobody there. Everybody's still masked up.
Yeah.
And that was so cool. So what it was, and we'll put a link to that specific set too, but Andrew was going to play, and then she virtually, that's what I thought was so cool was, and this production team too is just insane with what they're able to do. But so Andrew was performing in the middle, and then on the sides was where you could see the dancers and the outlines and the silhouettes.
Like fed in there digitally.
Yeah. And Artalander, that's
Instagram.
Artalander's Instagram, Artalon, was headlining on that. So that was really cool. And he loved it.
Yeah.
The feedback from him too is, he just loved having y'all there. And it was just such a nice switch from the normal live streams and actually having, because I thought at first when you just looked at it, I was like, oh, that's just, and then I saw y'all, I was like, oh shit, that's, that's the GoGo Gadgettes. So that was super cool. But even then I remember you still keeping to yourself and but for safety reasons and with everything going on.
I was also because I was on my computer.
Yeah.
So like the girls were, some of them were like Dallas, Florida, California.
Really?
Like,
I didn't know that.
Some of like my festival performers. So not just like the local ones, but yeah, they were, dialed in. And so we're like kind of like the Brady Bunch, like we're on the Zoom. So there's like a chat there, like, hey, make sure like there's a time schedule. So just because I was like monitoring that and like making sure that the video changed to the right person, all of that. That's what I was working. So if I seemed standoffish, it's because I was just busy working on that. Yeah.
So she's not standoffish, y'all.
I'm busy.
She's just working. So I really that was something too, I think, just behind the music and behind everything that's going on, behind the dancing. It was like, you're a person and you're doing something that's so much greater than you that a lot of people basically can't fathom, because it's so hard when you're in your frame of reference too. And when maybe you're drinking, maybe you're just out, you're with your friends and you're in the zone, and people just forget that there's actually people putting this on. So we can enjoy what you're doing, and it's amazing.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
Thank you.
So thank you.
But yeah, we definitely sign ourselves up for it though, but it's a labor of love. So
yeah. So what's next? I know y'all are doing, you said Seismic has been pushed out to May, but what else? So now you're doing the Cedar Street shows. What's the future right now looking for you guys?
Yes, we've got some of our shows till Cedar. Oh my gosh, my hair. Okay. So we've got there's not a mirror over there.
She's got her hair.
So yeah, we've got some of our shows at Cedar Street. And then Seismic's in May, and then some other super secret, highly confidential projects that will be revealed soon enough. But yeah, I guess we could talk a little bit more about Seismic. So Seismic Dance Event is our festival, and that's definitely like a huge baby of ours. It's under the RealMusic Events umbrella, but it's its own like entity as well. And it's our festival brand that we've been growing. And we knew like years ago that we would want to eventually do that, but it's work. So you want to build up to it. You don't want to, again, bite off more than you can chew before you have the right resources to do that, you know.
But you guys had some major headliners. Even last year was...
The lineup that we're about to reveal is even crazier.
I don't believe that, but
I'm sure we love it at least.
No, I'm sure it is, but it was just the lineup last year was insane.
Yeah.
So you had Deadmau5 as Test Pilot, which is his techno alias, and you had Eric Pritz as Sarah SD, which is his techno alias. Those were the two headliners. And then everyone that
plus all of the other amazing
headliners,
but like they were the top billing acts. But yeah, I mean it was It was crazy. And that festival is a source of pride for me because especially like earlier on in like our RealMusic Events years, just there's the misconception that you have to deal with of being the female. And because I also happen to be a dancer and have my dance team, you can just be, people will think that's your sole like thing that you do is just the dancing side, so that everything else about the show must be the guy. So that's been a thing to just deal with as a female, working in this industry and in any industry really, but especially this one. But when the festival came, it's like, you know, progressively I've been more and more involved in like just the details that go behind the shows. And the festival thing is definitely something that I hold a lot of pride around. Like I came up with the name, I came up with like the creative like vision of the stage names, the stage concepts, the overall like creative aesthetic, like getting our logo designed and like what it means. And it's like a triangle, but it's a geometric representation of a volcano. And there's like energy coming through. And so yeah, we have our volcano stage, our tsunami stage, and all of that. And that was something that like I'd been thinking through, and once it was ready and we were at the place we needed to be and we were able to handle it logistically, you know, we started it. And
yeah, because the first one was at what's the name of
Travis County Expo Center.
County Expo Center.
It was supposed to be at Carson Creek Ranch, and then the rain forecast, we ended up moving it the week of, like 4 days before.
You guys were like professional movers there.
Yes, I call ourselves professional event relocators. We got to do that so many times.
That. Yeah, dirty. I mean, there were so many different ones that happened.
Yeah, so many different occasions. So we moved it to Travis County Expo Center because we could have the indoor stadium aspect. Then last year was at the Austin American Statesman, and now it will be at the new venue that is to be revealed.
Ooh, dun dun dun.
But it's gonna be great. And part of like this venue is, it only exists because it had the perfect setup for Seismic to fit there. So
really,
yeah,
it's
gonna be good. But yeah, like just the production of everything, it's all something that I work closely with, and like the production teams that we hire, and just the vision for that. It's just like a special thing for us. So
that's exciting.
Yeah.
Who's someone that you're listening to right now?
Oh shit! I always hate this question because it's always like when there's just too many, like you just can't ever think on off the cuff. We listen to Andrew a lot because he just, a lot of like me and like our closest friends will be like, no, he really is like our favorite DJ, and for real, like he plays a lot of like the things that we want to in the diversity. So when we're not talking about Andrew, a lot of like, you know, the melodic techno stuff is really big and popular right now. Like Art Bat's been a super big artist that we've also had, and they've just put out a lot of great stuff, and that kind of sound is something that we really love. But yeah, there's Mathame. They're doing like huge things, and they were on the Seismic lineup, the original 3.0 lineup. So everyone will get to see what the revised 3.3 lineup looks like. But
3.3.
There's just a lot of great stuff like that. And I like the combination of like the fun, like tech house stuff, because you just get have like the little bump in your trunk moments, you know, like the fun.
It's fun.
The fun party times. And then sometimes like, we also like the more cerebral stuff and the more like melodic techno things. And then sometimes just the techno and just, you know, hard, and not like super hard, but like more just techno driving fast.
Steve and I were talking about all the different subgenres that people forget, is that there's EDM, which it's like this blanket electronic dance music, but then that's not even describing like literally, there's so many different subgenres.
Yeah. When I was like first getting into the scene, there's this website that I had a link for it like in my AOL Instant Messenger like profile. And it was, you go to like the tree of electronic dance music and it just all branches off. And so you you can play little sounds.
Oh my God.
And so you get to like just learn all the different subgenres. My biggest pet peeve is the everlasting debate about EDM versus house and techno. Like when people say that, okay, my chair just made a sound and it wasn't me farting.
The microphone's picking that all up.
Anyway, but the whole like people will talk shit about EDM as if that's like big room or like festival sound. Like EDM stands for electronic dance music. I'm sorry to break it to some of you guys, but house and techno are electronic dance music. So those are all under the umbrella of electronic dance music. Just because popular mainstream and the rise of the festival age, people start associating like big room main stage sound with EDM doesn't mean that that's the definition of it. It's like electronic dance music is still electronic dance music. It's EDM has garnered like a new bad name for itself. Not like bad, but it's like controversial almost, but it doesn't need to be.
Well, and I've heard from certain artists that they're like not allowed to play certain things that say EDM in the title. So you're like, okay. But like you said, that's how people have associated that term.
Yeah.
And big room, when we say big room is like the kind of like main stage, like I'm trying to think like a
more
David
like the
Guetta,
festival anthem
Calvin
kind of
Harris, like some, but not even, I mean, I'm a Calvin Harris fan. I'm trying to think
and
of
it's not necessarily like,
it's not a bad
it's not
thing.
like it's all bad. Some of it's bad. Some of it's good and catchy, but like, I don't know. We like variety, you know, but I just think people focusing too much on the labels has become this really annoying, useless debate. So
yeah,
that's one thing that we're like very adamant about. We're like, let's not forget what EDM stands for.
No, that totally makes sense. But I think, like you said, for people that have seen that, I mean, I've seen that too, but you just assume like big room is playing in like the big room is what they kind of that came from. But even then, everyone's sound has changed.
Yeah, it's always changing. And so the people, like the techno snobs that used to hate on trance, then all of a sudden, a lot of techno artists start playing melodic techno, and then people are like, that is like trance. And then
acid techno. And then
it's like, it's nice when genres blur. And that used to be like one of our little phrases that like, something about blurring lines, blurring genres.
But I love
like
that. So the Adana twins, I saw them last year. I went to Houston actually to see them because I had that was for me one of those sets that and I know y'all had that or were having them.
Yeah.
And I was so excited about that because I got to see them and I had just seen I know they had booked like a Circle set, but that hands down was probably one of my favorite sets of last year, of 2019, for the simple fact that they went from like disco to house to techno to Berlin techno to all these different genres, but to seamlessly do that is really tough.
Exactly. And that's something that like Andrew does, and it's kind of like a double-edged sword when you like are interested in multiple genres, because it's like you're not this specific brand. Like branding wise, sometimes it's nice when you hone in on the style, but artistically, like if it keeps things interesting, it keeps you motivated and passionate to tap into different things. That's good, and sometimes that variety is nice. And again, like styles and trends and sounds are always evolving, and certain things are more hot, and there's more sounds coming out in this realm than there are in that realm, and it's just an ever-moving, it's fluid.
Yeah.
The scene is fluid, the genres are fluidity.
But it's tough to do with just those transitions and having people kind of go in and out. So that was something I thought he did really, really well, or they did really, really well, seeing them. But then just the other artists that are, and I feel like the really big ones can do that.
Right.
They know how to do it.
Exactly.
They found their niche. You know, you've got Claude Von Stroke, who's coming here, you know, with his Dirty Bird sound, but he's another one, like I went to Holy Ship 2 years ago, and he's on there, obviously we're in all the different costumes, but he was able to, he'd go and play like a drum and bass set.
Right, and he has his Barclay Crenshaw.
Yeah, Barclay Crenshaw with Green Velvet. So those different sounds, it's the really skilled DJs, like you said, that can do that, that not everyone, I feel like, is super well versed to do, and they just want to label themselves like, I'm only a tech house DJ, that's all I play is tech house or techno or whatever. So I love that. I love being able that you recognize that as well.
Right.
That people can blur those genres and play different types of music.
Yeah, because artists are people, you know, they're going to be multifaceted and have interests and tastes that aren't like 2D.
Yeah.
You know?
I love that. So we are here actually too. And I know we've touched on a lot of different things, and I want to make sure to touch on RealMusic Fashion.
Yes,
so that was
RealMusic RealFashion.
RealMusic RealFashion. But tell us just, I know, again, there's so many other things. We could have literally 5 shows, but with this particular concept in RealMusic Fashion, like what is this to you?
Yeah, so I designed stuff myself, with the dancers, and it's kind of all grown from there. And people have asked me for a while, like, when am I going to start making things for consumers? Because it's always been like for performers, whether they're my dancers or like other festival dancers. And just time has been my biggest like enemy. Like I don't have a bunch of free time, and that's always kind of stopped me from growing that side of my business. And then I also had my day job. I used to work for like Google. So I left Google in September to focus, like, because Seismic was getting like intense. So to focus on like our festivals and RealMusic Events and all of that, took the leap. And then the store, like this was our office space, like over like a year and a half ago, we got this spot. And we're like, wow, it'd be really cute if we had like some things people can come. And there isn't like a place in Austin, or there wasn't at the time where, you could come and get like club wear.
There's
like
still, I don't know.
Yeah. And so like festival fashion and then some streetwear and all that. And especially for even guys, like it's not just a female thing. And Andrew is into fashion. Like we're both into, like cool shoes and clothes and all of that stuff. And like, there's not enough places. Like, there's like nothing for guys to go to. Like girls have all kinds of things they can go to online or in person, but like it's more limited for dudes who want to wear like cool, fun things. So we wanted to be able to just have like stuff for people to come shop and up their game, and you can have fun with it. So like Andrew he wasn't always as into it as he is now, but like we went to Mykonos once on a trip, and then they're like, let me give you these things, and he's like, fine. And he tried on stuff that he never would have tried on, and then he ended up like feeling himself. He was like, wow,
It's like, I look good.
And then even like going to like Holy Ship and then Friendship and stuff, like the first year, people dress up in costume, and the first year I had more stuff to dress up in, and then Andrew took more of a back seat. Then he saw like all these guys going around like in costumes and how much fun they were having, and like it looked like these people had spent a lot of time like working on their like light up things and all that. And so then we started having more fun with it. We would have like little costumes or things that we would wear, and he ended up realizing like how much more fun you can have when you just go into it. Like you don't always have to be too cool for school, you know? And it was kind of like a life lesson, sometimes just dive into things. And so we've just kind of like expanded upon that and wanting to be able to facilitate that for other people.
Yeah. So this is located on the east side, so y'all can look it up. I also want to make sure we cover all the ways people can find you, can get in touch with you, can follow all the new show announcements. So we've got...
So there's RealMusic. So my personal is _the_Kelly on Instagram. And then like for our business accounts, there's RealMusic Events. So we're most active on Facebook just because there's more things you can do there. But we have our Instagram account, Twitter. So that because Twitter is just like a cesspool.
Steve's a big Twitter person. He's always trying to get me on that.
I I've got too many things.
That's
I've got
how I feel.
Facebook
and he clowns on me all the time. Like he's like, oh, but you wouldn't know because you're not like literally yesterday.
You shut up, Steve. Let us speak.
Clowning me about Twitter, and I'm like, okay, I don't have all that time.
It takes too much time, and then even just moderate. Like, I've got all these accounts I'm jumping around between. Like, there's the RealMusic account, Seismic Dance Event. Then now there's the RealMusic RealFashion one. There's my dance group, the GoGo Gadgettes. I feel like I'm probably missing something else, and then there was even like our own personal pages. Like I used to have like my Kelly professional page on Facebook, and then Andrew's DJ Andrew Parsons, and we barely even post on either of those because we're just too busy, and we just have our main personal ones. But yeah, then people were like, are you gonna start a dog Instagram? I'm like, no, I can't.
No. Oh, like I've gotten that about Leon. I feel like I'm like, no, Leon's just, but dogs are just, they bring so much joy.
Yeah, so much.
And the dogs of Instagram. So
yeah.
Well, I just want to tell you, thank you so much for doing this and for being here. We're gonna do another segment if we can, which will be a surprise. Y'all see that later. But find Kelly. Thank you again for doing what you're doing for Austin. Looking forward to more shows, more announcements, more exciting things, and we'll have everything in the show notes. So thank you, Kelly, for being here.
I'm glad we did this, and it's definitely, I feel like, we could keep going.
Keep going.
We could do this, re-meet later.
We will. We definitely will. Seismic. when we have that coming.
Yeah, that'll be a good one.
I'm excited.
Focus more on that. But yeah, thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Bye everyone.
Boom.